Hello, I'm Katie T from Katie T's Home and I'm so happy you're here. So I have a question for you. Do you have a painter's ladder or a decorative ladder and you're struggling so hard with knowing how to decorate it? Well, good news for you because I have 9 styling ideas that you can incorporate in your decorative ladder. And to be honest, these tips can be used for any type of shelves, whether it's a painter's ladder shelf or just like a built-in bookshelf in your living room. So if you don't have a painter's ladder or decorative ladder, you can still get a lot out of this video. So hit that subscribe button. I'm new to YouTube and trying to build valuable content, and be sure to comment below on your thoughts. And without further ado, let's jump in. So for my first styling tip out of the 9 styling tips for a modern cottage decorative ladder shelf is not to overcrowd the space. Now, with my first attempt to decorate my painter's ladder, I did this and it looks so bad. I'll put a link below to the blog article that I wrote, and I kept some pictures up there from the first attempt. And it was just way overcrowded. And eventually I did get it looking decent when it was in my office. I took a ton of stuff away and it looked good. However, the inspiration hit and I ended up relocating it to my screened-in porch because I had the idea to put all of my like food scraps like the scallions and avocado, and I have like a million orange and lemon tree seedlings. Don't ask me why, I guess I'm obsessed with doing that. So I decided to relocate it and put it on my screened-in porch. And it's definitely not as busy as what it was. I still think I could probably take some stuff away, but I don't know. Like, put it in the comments. What do you think? Do you think that what I have is good, or I should take some stuff away? But point in case, learn from my original mistake that less is more when it comes to decorating a decorative ladder shelf. You don't need a ton. Like, the ladder, the angles that it's at will in of itself be there for the visual. So less is more in this, example. So keep that in mind when decorating your shelves for either a decorative ladder or just, bookshelves like I mentioned earlier. So the next styling tip out of the 9 styling ideas for decorating your modern cottage ladder shelf is to style in groups. And this tip builds off of the first point of not overcrowding the space. So white space goes a long way when it comes to decorating. Without the white space, everything will look overcrowded, as I mentioned in the first section. However, if you have white space that is equally proportioned, then that will give the illusion that there's too much space and not enough decor. So the goal is to group your decorative pieces together and give that white space and decorate your shelves with the different decorative pieces that you have. And many of you don't know this, but I majored in art when way back when I was in college. And I took a whole class on the fundamentals of design. And one of the key components of design is consistency, or what I like to call the uniform look. And as many of you can imagine, this technique is exactly what it sounds like. Everything is consistent or uniform and perfectly symmetrical. And there is a time and a place for that. And if you like that look on your decorative ladder shelves or on your bookcase shelves, then by all means, you do you. But for me, I believe that grouping things and having adequate white space will give the overall aesthetic more depth. And I won't go into further detail on how to apply the fundamentals of design to your decorating in general, because I do have a full guide on how to do that. However, know that each of the design techniques can help you master the overall visual that you are trying to achieve in your home. So again, style in groups. Think odd numbers too, like in threes, but it doesn't always have to be in threes. It kind of depends on the size and shape of the objects that you're decorating. And, be creative. Like, don't be afraid to try different things out and sit on it for a little bit and then change it up. I always do that. And, my house always looks different. I have friends that will come in and laugh and they'll be like, every time I come in here, it's like a whole new place. But you got to build it and make it to fit what you like in your style. And once you find what you like, then, it can stay. But until then, don't be afraid to, try some things around. So the next tip out of the 9 styling ideas for decorating your decorative ladder or the shelves is to add greenery. I think this tip speaks for itself. And whether you have faux plants or you have real ones, both will do just fine. However, I will say this, having live plants is definitely recommended on my end. There's just something about having live plants that you can't replicate with the fake ones for obvious reasons. And like I said earlier, because I have my decorative ladder outside, and it gives me a chance to put the different food scraps like the scallions or the lemon trees or avocado seedling that I'm trying to grow on the decorative ladder. So definitely add some greenery. So next up on the list for the 9 styling ideas for your modern cottage decorative ladder shelf is to break up the texture. Now, when I first got this painter's ladder, I got it off of Facebook Marketplace. It had excessive texture, and you can still see it, like on the edge of it. It's very grainy, and it was just a lot. It was very over busy, and I'm sure my painter's ladder isn't the only one. If you're getting it from Facebook Marketplace, like it's an actual painter's ladder instead of being built. So my workaround for doing this was painting the bottom a solid color, aka white, to give the decorations a little bit more of a chance to stand out in the sea of graininess on the actual painter's ladder. And if you want to know how I did that, or want to know how I matched the top shelf color stain to the actual painter's ladder stain, then you can check out the guide that I have below. But this concept is similar to the second styling tip about grouping items. It's all about the balance. And if you have that nice balance, then things just feel right. You know what I mean? And I can only imagine how busy this painter's ladder would look if I didn't have the white bottom. Like, it would just be way too much. So yes, again, break up the textures if you need to, but I'm sure, even if it's just soft and, flat, then that goes a long way. You don't want too much. So the 5th tip out of the 9 styling ideas to decorate a decorative ladder shelf is to group high and low objects together. So in general, when styling with decor, you should always pair high and low objects together. And the reason that you do that is because this will create depth for whatever you're decorating. So for example, I placed 2 different size potting plants to strike that height contrast. And without it, you run the risk of everything looking too uniform, like I mentioned earlier with the design technique. So definitely style with high and low objects paired together. So then that way it's not flat. So next up on the list, on the 9 styling ideas for your painter's ladder shelf, is to keep it neutral. Keep the colors neutral colors. And this will help in two different ways. The first way the neutral tones will help style your decorative ladder is by creating a coherent space. And what I mean by that is when the colors are all neutral, they will match and tie everything in together. And this will make your ladder look like everything belongs, like everything is, like I said, coherent. On the flip side, if you have mostly neutral colors, when you do add that pop of color, it will stand out more. Like, for example, the blue and accent undertones or accents that I have in my decorative ladder stand out a little bit more because I have so many natural browns and whites. So keep that in mind too. If you do decide to add color, that color will draw attention compared to the neutral undertones that are the majority of your decorative ladder. So next up on the list of 9 styling ideas for your ladder shelves is to decorate with personal items. And this tip goes without saying, but it's so easy to fall into the trap of wanting the Pinterest perfect house and decor at all times. But the problem with having a picture perfect house is that it's not a home. The goal is to create a home and not just live in the house. So this means that making your home personal and styled to fit who you are is a must. And your decorative ladder shelves are no exception to this. So with that said, add those personal elements, whether you opt for picture frames or personal signs or anything that is what, makes you you. Add that in there. It can be something, like completely unexpected too. Like my husband inherited an old suitcase, and it's one of those thin office ones. It's a harder outside, and when I had the painter's ladder in the house, I used that as a decorative piece because my husband inherited that from his father and he really liked the suitcase. So it was a nice little way to just add that little extra heritage, I guess you could say. So, as funny as that sounds, but make it personal and don't be afraid to not make it that picture perfect Pinterest type of style. So next up on the list of the styling ideas is to add organic materials. So the organic look is so trendy nowadays, whether it's a vase, wooden box, woven mat, or even greenery. It's super trendy. And usually I like trendy, but only in certain situations. And this is one of those situations because I feel like it's timeless. I feel like you can get away with having this across, a span of time without it being outdated, if you will. So, I don't know, I challenge you, add some organic materials, but make it, take it a step further. Like, for example, I added some rocks and driftwood that my husband and I have been collecting over the years every time we go to the beach. So ask yourself, what can you add that's an organic material that will look good on your decorative shelves? Perhaps you collect sand from the different places that you travel, or you have a handmade wooden carving. Either way, you can't go wrong, and it will also be more personal in that way too, like the other tip I just mentioned when you're adding these types of things. So last but not least on the styling ideas for your ladder shelves is to make sure that you have subtle textures. And I know I talked about the overwhelming texture of the painter's ladder before and how I was trying to avoid that. This is similar, but it's a little different in the way that it's subtle. And this can take the form of many different decorative pieces. Like, it's really not too hard to incorporate this. Like, for example, in the pots for the plants that I have, they have a very subtle texture. It's all a white pot, but there's a different design, I guess, on each of them. So, I mean, whether this is adding a vase that has that earthy texture to it or some other decor piece, either way, adding subtle texture is super important, and you really can't go wrong when you see the outcome. But yeah, that's it. That is the 9 styling ideas that I have for you for decorating your painter's ladder or decorative ladder shelves. Hit that subscribe button, like I mentioned earlier. Put a comment below on how your painter's ladder looks. Like, what types of things do you have in your painter's ladder? What types of things do you plan on adding now that you've heard these different styling tips? I would love to hear it. So I will see you next time. Bye.